Alright, this video is going to be about every vehicle I've ever had, starting from my first three-wheeler to every car I've ever had on the road. It's going to be probably a lot of pictures with stories, but I definitely have some old videos too. So let's jump right into it, and I'll talk about the first vehicles that I had when I had my license. And this is going to be a pretty long video, so I'll put the timestamps in the video description of what vehicles are getting talked about at what times.
Alright, so right as I started driving, I pretty much had access to these two vehicles. This here is a 1988 Mazda RX7, and this here is an 86 Isuzu Trooper. So let's talk about the Mazda first. My dad got this car when he was working. He saw it sitting at someone's yard with no plates on it. Looked like it hadn't moved in a while. Went and talked to the guy. Pretty much ended up getting it for free. So this is us towing it home. And the guy had rear-ended someone with it and pretty much stopped driving it at that point. But we got it all, so it needed some body work. So here it is, fixed up, looking good, painted. This was a cool car to drive. It was like a sports car, rear-wheel drive. It was pretty fast with its rotary engine. But it had a few things about it I didn't like. One, it didn't have enough ground clearance. It was only a couple inches off the ground. It was real easy to bottom out on stuff, especially a lot of my friends' driveways or go anywhere off-road. It wasn't good in the snow. Couldn't tow anything. Couldn't carry a lot of people or stuff. And being in high school, I often wanted to move a lot of people around, and sometimes I'd have 5 people in it, and the people in the back, they'd just be laying on top of each other. But then I pretty much mostly started driving this over the Mazda. Now, this was something we had for years. My dad had bought it to tow our sailboat, and it was something we got real cheap because the frame was rotted out on it, and the back of the frame was actually broken. And we went to a junkyard, got another frame, and cut it in half and used the back of that frame on this car. We had someone install it, and then it was a good vehicle. And now this was a cool vehicle because it could fit a lot of people in it, a lot of stuff. It could tow my trailer, it could go off-road, it could go in the snow. This was a practical vehicle, but it had a few big negatives to it. One, it didn't have any power. It had a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder carbureted engine. Getting the thing up to 65 miles an hour was pretty much impossible. It didn't idle, so whenever I would come up to a stop sign or stoplight, I'd have to drive it with 3 feet, meaning my left foot would be on the clutch, and then my right foot, I'd have to be able to hit the gas and the brake pedal at the same time to keep it running. And I got pretty good at doing it after a while. Here's some old photos of pulling this boat out of the swamp. My dad and I were going to fix it up. And this trailer, I used to tow this trailer everywhere. It was great. My 4-wheeler could go right in it. And here's at the dump. I always like going here. I'd always find a lot of broken stuff and bring it home and fix it. But then we got another Isuzu Trooper that was a real big upgrade over this one. Before talking about more trucks, let's go back to 1993 and talk about my 3-wheeler.
Alright, this is the first real vehicle I ever had. I mean, before this, I had one of those electric power wheels, but those are pretty underpowered and the range is way too short on them. This thing is a lot faster. I got this when I was 7 years old. My dad bought it for me. I rode this thing a ton. This is a 1985 Yamaha Tri-zinger 60. And this thing was a real good thing to learn how to drive on because these 3-wheelers takes a little bit of finesse to ride these properly. Alright, it's been years since I've started this thing, but let's try it. This thing always ran good. Just gonna throw a little stable in this thing. This is oil injected, but just to be safe, put a drop in here. Let's see if she'll fire up. Real third pull. It's running good too. Yamaha makes good stuff. Yeah, let's just ride this thing around for a while. Why'd you quit? I put a spark plug in it. Oh, it doesn't look that bad. Right until it quits. Carburetor needs to be cleaned on that. So here's the carburetor here. It's not quite running right. This thing's easy to work on though. And I just bought a new carburetor on eBay for 20 bucks. Aftermarket, but there's the choke and the throttle cable. Alright. Well. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the float's stuck. Alright, see the position the float's in? Like this down position? And the needle, look at that. Alright, so this is a pretty easy fix. You can see the float in there is just stuck. See how that should move a lot easier than that. And it's just dirty right around the needle. Okay, so I pull that out. And that's all right there. That's just a little dirty. Let's throw this in the ultrasonic cleaner. Look at the stuff coming off it right there. Alright, we'll let that run for a few minutes. There. Okay, so now this is important that this moves easily.
It's gorgeous out.
All right, well, the Tri-zinger is running pretty good. So this was my main vehicle, probably from 2nd grade, probably all the way to 5th. And then I got a LT80, which I don't have that still, but I got some photos of it.
Searching through old VHS tapes, I just found this 1980s video of my cousin riding a brand new Honda Big Red 3-wheeler. I first saw this tape when I was about 6 years old. This was the video that got me into riding. That 3-wheeler looked like so much fun, I knew I had to have one. After riding the Tri-zinger for years, next I wanted something a little bigger. I got this 1992 Suzuki LT80 4-wheeler. This was a little bit faster with a bigger engine, had electric start, it was a 4-wheeler. And I rode this thing for a lot of years. This thing was great, it was very reliable, never really had any problems with it. The only reason I sold this is because I pretty much just got too big for it, and my knees were hitting the handlebars. Right around 5th grade is when I got my boat. This is a 1958 Tomahawk Ski-mate. And when I got it, it was just pretty much a shell where it needed the whole thing redone. And my dad and I fixed it up with doing all the body work, putting seats in it, and a motor. And I still have this. This has been a good boat. Once I got too big for the LT80, the next 4-wheeler I got was a 1997 Yamaha Warrior 350. This one had a 6-speed manual transmission with reverse. This was a lot faster and bigger than the LT80, and I rode this 4-wheeler for a lot of years. I did spend a lot of time fixing this one, but at least I got really good at working on stuff from owning this 4-wheeler. For my next 4-wheeler, I went and bought a brand new 2003 Suzuki Z400. That was when these things first came out. This 4-wheeler was much faster than the Yamaha Warrior. It was a lot of fun to ride, and I did ride this thing a ton for years, especially since my friend bought one right at the same time, and a bunch of my friends had 4-wheelers at the time, so we were just always riding these things after school. And it was fun doing upgrades to them, like upgrading the skid plates and tires. One bad thing about buying a first-year product, these things, they had problems when they first came out with the frames breaking. My friend broke the frame on his pretty quick. The dealer ended up giving him a brand new frame and doing all the labor changing it. I didn't want my frame to break, especially since it was already rusty in that spot, so I ended up bracing it up before it had a chance to break. I kept this 4-wheeler for 3 years, and then I traded it in on an enduro. So that Z400, I ended up trading that in for this in 2006. I bought this brand new. This is a Yamaha TW200 enduro, and a few things that stand out about this. This has these fat tires on it that no other enduro has. And it's got a nice low seat. This is a very easy to ride bike. It's an on-off-road bike, so it works good off-road and it's road legal. And this bike has been great. It's been very reliable. It can easily carry a passenger. This is a very great thing for exploring because you can easily just go down trails, pop out on some road somewhere and be completely fine. So definitely recommend these. And these things are pretty cheap too. The way to get them is just to get them new. One thing that's also great about this is Yamaha started selling these think in the mid 80s, and they still sell these things in 2019 unchanged, which, you know, that's a big problem that so many other companies have. Like, they'll have a product that's great and then they'll redesign it for no reason, and sometimes the new one's inferior to the old ones. So definitely great on this that you can buy a brand new 30-year-old motorcycle with all that great 80s technology. And some people may try to argue, oh, this is only 200 cc's, it's not fast enough. That's completely nonsense, because this thing, these fat tires grip everything so well. You can really corner very fast on this thing. And how easy this thing is to ride makes it very easy to go fast on it if you want to race it. Let's see how much these cost in 2020. Motorcycle, dual sport. There it is. That's cool. They still sell these things brand new, so $4,600. When I got mine in 2006, it was $3,600, but still cheaper than anything else you'd buy. This is the bike to get right here. And here's the important thing. They still sell these in the upcoming year 2020. Very good job, Yamaha. And as far as sport four-wheelers goes, I still have one. None of my friends have been riding much lately, but I have taken this out a few times. This is a 2001 Honda 300EX. These are very reliable machines, and you know, it's got reverse, 5-speed. These grippy tires work really well. This thing goes, I've gone in some deep snow with this thing and it goes fine. You know, these are definitely great machines. A big key with four-wheelers, though, people always ruin them by changing like the mufflers and putting aftermarket parts on them. That's very important not to do that. Leave these stock. They will stay running forever. As soon as they get a pipe or something, they're usually garbage in a year. But this is definitely an all-stock 300EX. Nice thing to have. I'm just curious what Honda is selling currently. See if they still sell 300EXs. So that'd be under sport. And that's it. Well, it's good they have a youth model, but these 250Xs are pretty lame because it's semi-automatic. I mean, that's pretty much just a Recon missing its racks. That's lame. Let's see what they have for utility. I mean, utilities are kind of better because you can go out riding them all day and stay clean. I guess I'd probably have to say get the Rancher if you're going to get something cheap. I can't believe they don't sell any more sport ATVs. Let's see what Yamaha has. ATV. Sport. Looks like they have a youth, which is good, a 50. You're either getting a 50 or a 7. Oh, no, here's a 450. Okay. Okay, you're getting a 50, a 700, or a 450. Well, that's cool. These are actually cool models. And a 90. All right. Well, at least Yamaha's still selling sports. This isn't really comparable to that 300EX, because if you get up on the mountains on this thing wants to go fast, and it doesn't want to go slow. And if you're trying to go slow on the thing, you're not going to have a good time. That's why the 300EX is nice, because you can do both. But this is a very fast machine here. Better than nothing. Check their utilities. Now, I still got a big selection. That's a good. Usually, like a 450 is better than like a 700. They're a little ridiculous.
Even though riding sport four-wheelers kind of fell out of fashion, a lot of my friends did get these things. And I don't know if this is like an old man four-wheeler, but this thing is pretty fun because you can go out riding on this thing, carry 2 people, carry a bunch of stuff. This has been a very nice work vehicle. Had this a year and a half now. And I'm not going to talk about too much because there is an hour-and-a-half long video on my channel I did last year on this thing. But side-by-sides are definitely fun vehicles.
Around the time I bought that yellow Suzuki, I also bought this. This is a 2001 Honda Foreman Rubicon ATV. This one had a 500cc engine with a computer-controlled hydraulic transmission. This was my first 4x4 ATV, and the 4x4s are definitely cool. They can go anywhere, and they're a lot more practical than the sport four-wheelers, being that you can still have a good time on them, but they can get work done. And when you go out riding them, generally you come back clean. On the sport four-wheelers, every puddle and the mud gets thrown right at you. So the utility four-wheelers are the way to go. Here I built this nice bumper for it because that plastic thing fell right off the front right away. This four-wheeler was okay. I was definitely having a lot of problems with it, though. That computer-controlled transmission kept having issues with sensors where it wouldn't shift, and the thing would stall when you drive it in water. So I kept this one a couple years, but I ended up trading this for a 95 Foreman 400.
After I was having so many problems with that Honda Rubicon, I pretty much traded it for this. This is a 95 Honda Foreman 400. And this one has been great. I've had this over 15 years now. This is something I would never sell. It's been very reliable. It's got a very nice low center of gravity, which it does great on steep hills. And this has been plenty of fun to ride as a sport machine because you can go out riding this thing and come back, still be plenty clean. And it can use it for work. Plus, with the four-wheel drive, this thing goes anywhere.
Sometimes I would buy four-wheelers just to fix them up. This is a good example here. I think I paid like $40 for this thing because it was pretty much destroyed. Then here it is about halfway through the repair process where a bunch of parts were missing and broken. I would just order everything that it needed off eBay and put it all together. And here it is all finished up. I did a ton of work to this thing to get it looking good again, but you can see like this bumper, I put that mesh in there, put all new tires on it. And I've done quite a few four-wheelers like this, but, you know, they don't quite make this video because it wasn't really something that I was riding. It was just something I was fixing up. I had this BW200 for a little while, too. Look how I brought this thing home. I bought it for $100 because it didn't have any compression, and I didn't want to go home and get a trailer, so I just did this. So I rebuilt the engine on that and got that running. And I did ride it for a little while. I probably should have kept it a little longer. It was this and the Honda Fat Cat. Like, they were the only dirt bikes that had ATV tires on them.
All right, another vehicle that was really important to me was this thing here. This is a Goped scooter. I bought this brand new. I think I was 13 or 14. The thing that was cool about this, before you have a driver's license, your options are either like your bike or your feet. You know, sometimes we rode four-wheelers down the road, but everyone kind of knew you weren't allowed to do that. This thing here, I would ride this down the road all the time, and no one ever said anything or cared. And this was a lot better than a bike because this thing did a solid 20 miles an hour, went up hills and everything, no problem. This was really cool transportation for a lot of years. A bunch of my friends got them. It's cool that it's a cool scooter. You can just pick it right up. It folds up. To start it up, just drop it down, unfold it. Usually I would just pick it right up like that. I definitely recommend these scooters. These things are great, especially too, like, still, it's like a vehicle you can carry around easily. Like if you're boating or something and boated to an island, you could easily bring this on the boat.
Here's some 2004 photos of me riding that scooter. So that'd be 15 years ago now. Just curious if they still sell these things. Well, it certainly looks like it. That looks like the same thing. How much is it? $728. It was $400 when I bought it. At least they're still available. And I had a scooter just like this too. That thing was a lot of fun. But I was like taking it off-road way too much and it wasn't meant for that. This thing was fun though. It did a solid 40 miles an hour. This is the first snowmobile I ever got. This was a 1972 Ski Doo Elan 250. This is something I bought off one of my friends for $100 that needed work. And I got it running and did ride this for a few years. Then a bunch of years went by where I never had a snowmobile. Finally, I got another one. I got this, I think $350 I paid for it. It was a late 80s Yamaha XLV 540. And here it is after I did a little work to it. I fixed a bunch of little miscellaneous things wrong with it. New duct tape seat cover, new windshield. And this was the first time I had it out for the season. And it was running great, but within the first 20 minutes, the engine blew up. But since I was out riding with a bunch of friends and all their stuff was pretty nice, and my thing blew up the first time, I was like, well, let me actually get a decent snowmobile. So there was a bunch of people up there riding. I just started asking people, like, hey, you want to sell your snowmobile? And one guy said yes. So I ended up getting this. It's a 2000-something Arctic Cat ZL800. I think I paid $1,700 for it. And then that was pretty cool, so I was able to keep riding for the rest of the day. So I still have this. This is a decent snowmobile. It hasn't been that reliable, though. Being an 800 with its studded track, this thing is very fast. It will get up to 100 miles an hour in what feels like no time. XLV 540. I did end up getting another one really cheap that was missing a bunch of parts that had a good motor, and I made one good one out of the two of them. After having that one Yamaha 540 in the Arctic Cat, I started picking up more cheap Yamaha snowmobiles. I got a few of these Yamaha Enticer 340s. These are pretty cool. And then I picked up a few Yamaha Bravos. This one here, I took the entire suspension assembly and everything off the XLV 540 and made it fit this thing. And that made it pretty cool because it's like a youth snowmobile with a long track on it. And then I got another Bravo 250 that came from the factory with a long track on it. And this one's cool because it's got this nice basket on the back, and Levi likes to ride on it. This is the first jet ski I ever bought. This was a mid-90s Sea-Doo XP 720. I had this for a few years. I liked it, but it kept having an issue where it was always filling up with water, and I could never figure it out. Now that I've had a bunch of jet skis, I think it just had a loose exhaust clamp somewhere, because generally when they're filling up with water, that's the reason. After I sold that Ski Doo, I didn't have a jet ski for years, but then I was driving down the road one day and I saw this sitting on the side of the road with a big free sign on it. And with a little bit of work, I got it running, and it was pretty cool. But this being a 500cc, it was a little bit slow. So then I also picked up this 650 and another 500 that I got for $50 each that had been sitting, that were in really bad condition, but I got them both running. There is a cool video on my channel of fixing those two. And here's that one 500 after I had fixed it. This thing seemed like it was complete garbage, but after I did all the work to it, the thing ran great. Then I got this Kawasaki. This thing was pretty nice. Then I got these two as well that were really cheap. They had been sitting for a long time. This one I got running pretty easy, just took some work. This one I actually put a whole new engine in it. But this black one here turned out to be like my favorite one for the year. It did kind of blow up again towards the end of the year, and I got another engine for it. I'm going to change it next year. But I did ride it a lot, so it's not... I could swap that engine in no time, so it's not a big deal. And then here's one of the Wave Runner 3s with Levi on it. And mid-year 2019, I also picked up this Kawasaki 250, which it's a big 250 horsepower supercharged. I got it pretty cheap because it was in rough shape. And it's definitely fast and it rides nice, but I've been having a lot of issues with this thing breaking down. It pretty much breaks at least every other time I ride it. And, I mean, it's cool, but the last time I rode it, now it won't like rev over 3,000 RPMs. I think the supercharger belt broke, but I'm kind of trying to sell this one. But I've been having more fun on these cheap jet skis anyway, so that's kind of the way to go. All right, so let's go back to talking about trucks. This year I consider my first actual truck, because I had this white Trooper on the road for a while, but it wasn't that long before we got this. So this my dad actually got. When he was working, he saw it on the side of the road, had a free sign on it on the windshield, and we had it towed home. It was free because it had a blown head gasket. That was a very common problem for these. This had the 2.6 liter fuel injected 4-cylinder gasoline engine. My dad and I put the head gasket in it, and then this was my car, and I really liked driving this one because it had a lot more power than the white one. It had disc brakes. This being 2 years newer than this white one just had a lot of improvements from 88 to 86. So once it was fixed, so here we are at my friend's house. And this thing, I would drive this thing through the woods crazy with this thing. I treated it like a four-wheeler. So here it is. I added this light on the... Here's a video my friend and I did for computer class. We did a report on how durable computers were. We tested this by just running some computers over with the truck and saying that they were not durable enough.
It's on video, dude.
Alright, Kevin, say something. Be like, and this
It's filming. It's filming.
This test clearly shows that the IoTech 3000 is not a well-built computer, and you should not buy it.
This other kid did his project the week before, making up a computer company called IoTech. So we were reviewing his computer.
In this test, we will be testing a computer for CAC, Computer Accident Control. This test will test the durability of a computer case in the event of a car accident.
So this vehicle evolved quite a bit over the years. So here it is after I had done some work to it. Now, I really got to credit this vehicle because I learned a lot of stuff on how to fix vehicles because of this thing, because I was driving it, and in order to keep it running, I had to fix it. So, and this is the reason I learned how to weld, because when I got the first welder was because the body mounts on this thing broke. The body actually broke right off the frame because of rust, and I was hard on it. And my dad wanted to like fiberglass it back together. I was like, well, that's you know, that's probably more appropriate for a unibody vehicle, but not so much this. So we went and bought this Lincoln MIG welder, and that's really got me started welding. So I was able to fix the floor, and then I made this cool brush guard for it, and just started making parts and fixing it with that welder. So here it is right after I made this roof storage basket. And then I also put these limb raisers on here. Those worked really well for driving through brush because they would lift, like, instead of branches like whipping off the windshield, they would like lift them up and away from the windshield. It worked really good if you're driving down four-wheeler trails. Okay, so here's another rust repair. The frame actually broke in the back, and what I did to fix it, I just cut out the whole rear floor, and it was so much easier to get to the frame. So here's where it broke right there. So I took out the gas tank, and then I was able to do a really good job fixing that frame with the gas tank out. And then I made the rear floor section like a removable panel that could just be taken out in order to service the gas tank, drive shaft, axle, frame, anything under there. Here's some photos of it looking pretty good. These were some 5-lug rims. I actually drilled to be 6-lug, and I put them on there. I didn't have them on there that long, though. All right, then I started gathering a collection of troopers. One year we were out trick-or-treating, and this guy saw I had a trooper, and he's like, "Do you want another one?" I was like, "No, not really." And he's like, $20. I'm like, I don't know. My friend kind of wanted it. And then he's like, "Free." He's like, "All right." And I towed it home. So I took that red one, but that one was so rotted out. Then this white one, I actually got, that was in good shape. And I was kind of planning on driving it. That one had the V6 with an automatic. The automatic transmission was bad. It needed a tranny. Took it out. Was going to have it rebuilt. Everyone wanted like $1,000 to rebuild it. I never put it back in. Finally, I gave it to my friend. He took the transmission out of this red one, which was a standard, and put it in that white one, and he got that white one going again after. But I think it was like that transmission was like bad. It wouldn't go in four-wheel drive. He ended up getting another transmission, but he did get that going, and he drove it for a while. All right, so the first day of school in our senior year, we're like, "Oh, let's get up really early." Look, it's still dark out when we got out. I'm like, "Let's get our trucks all covered in mud before school, but let's not get stuck." On our way to get our trucks covered in mud and not get stuck, we immediately, like, my friend got stuck here with the Super Swampers. I'm like, "Oh, I'll try to get him." I got stuck, and then we were all pretty late on our first day to school pulling trucks out of the mud. Then here's my friend in the same spot after we got out, getting stuck. Okay, and then after school, we're like, "Let's go off-roading again." So this is what happened. So my friend, he had this Bronco. He had that thing one day, and that was the last day of it. So he was the first one that got stuck. He drove in this creek. The thing motor locked up, never ran again after that. So we eventually pulled him out. I eventually pulled him out, but then a bunch of people got stuck, and there was this creek, and I crossed the thing like 5 times. I was making it. But then like the 5th time, for whatever reason, my engine stalled. Then it was getting dark out, and then there was some hurricane coming up from Florida, and someone came and pulled me out, and we pulled this thing completely out of the water. We put it like right here. All right, it's dry, it's fine. And then when I came back the next day, this is what I found. I'm like, "Oh damn, my truck has been underwater for a while." So man, I wish I took photos of this. We finally went with, my friend came with like a Blazer, and it took us a while, but we got it out. Had to pull it up the whole trail. So the thing wouldn't start, obviously, because it was underwater, but it wasn't, I got it running again pretty quick. I had to change all the fluids a few times, and it wouldn't start, but after pulling it down the road, it finally got running again. That's one thing with vehicles. They should really, if I was part of the DOT, I wouldn't allow any vehicles on the road that weren't completely waterproof, because these cars that end up in floods and then they say, "Oh, the scrap metal because it got flooded," that's really a design flaw. You know, really a car should be able to go underwater, stay there for days, and then be fine once the water drains. And it's really not hard to do. Four-wheelers will do that. Generally, you can sink a four-wheeler, and then it doesn't take long to get them going again. So really that should transfer over to cars as well. So here we are a little later. So I finally switched. I got these Super Swamper Bogger tires, and those were some pretty aggressive tires. Like that thing would go anywhere. And those tires were good. They never got flat. Yeah, there it is there, looking pretty cool. Definitely like those tires. And we'd go camping a lot. Like we'd go out partying in the woods and just spend the night there. You know, here it is one morning after off-roading and camping. That was always fun. And my friend had this Toyota at the time. That thing was pretty nice. And we would race down these power lines. It would be like the rockiest trails and getting the trucks airborne all the time. And it was so much fun just flying down the power lines in these things. Yeah, the Toyotas were definitely good. That's one thing I really kind of regret was I never had a Toyota. And they're good vehicles. Oh, here was one night my friend got stuck. I think I pulled him out. Yeah, here's me pulling him out. And I think I made it through that. Those super swampers were amazing. Oh, there's my old trailer.
He's stuck. Yeah, your mom's gonna be happy. Wow. No, that's not fast enough. What's he doing? There we go. That's how you do it. Oh, the tire popped.
Here's a cool photo here, just driving through the mud up in the mountain. See, I think he looks kind of stuck. Remember, with these tires, that thing just went anywhere. So I got real tired of laying under cars. So one thing that was a lot easier than laying under them was just to tilt them on their side. So here I had used my Jeep to pull the Trooper on its side to work on the bottom of it. And I did it with it on its side. It was so easy to work on. I did a really good job fixing the drive shaft there, and I fixed the exhaust really well. So at the time, a bunch of my friends had off-road trucks like this, and that was one thing we always liked to do was just go drive around in the woods. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, go ahead. Climb it right there. Oh, you can run that over. It's not done yet. Climb it, baby. Do it. We just completely blocked off the trail for like there's a tree there. Is it moving? Oh! Yeah, right! Oh, yeah, you're definitely stuck.
So as far as reviewing Isuzu Troopers, I gotta say these are excellent vehicles except for their couple Achilles heel problems. So depending on what year you had, there was always different engines. The engine in this one, the 2.6 liter, they always had head gasket issues, but if you could get it worked out, they were good. As far as the drivetrain and suspension and axles, all that stuff was pretty much invincible. I was so hard on this vehicle, hitting jumps off it, running stuff over with it, just driving the thing ridiculously, and it pretty much didn't break. I mean, I did a few wheel bearings in it. I used to have to fix the frame a few times, but that was because of rust. And the skid plates on this thing were great. It was kind of like a sloped angle, and when you'd crash into stuff, instead of hitting it, it would just kind of get kicked up over, so that way you could run over trees and brush and cars and just anything. The vehicle was like invincible. I'm going to compare this to other vehicles I had later on, specifically the Jeeps that I had after this. But, you know, the Trooper, great vehicle, a lot of years. So this Trooper, definitely like my favorite vehicle. I don't know if it's first car nostalgia. I think just the invincibility of the thing and how much fun I had with it was great. And I actually still have this vehicle. I kind of want to fix it at some point. It's been sitting probably 10 years now. It needed an engine when it was sitting. It's probably got some sitting problems, and it could be revived. It kind of needs like a pretty big overhaul, but might happen. I have a parts one. So after I kind of unnecessarily gave up on this thing, I bought this Nissan Xterra. And here's what happened. After high school, I was driving to college, and it was a little far away to be driving this thing, especially with these tires on it. So I'm like, oh, let me just get a new vehicle, newish. So I actually spent money and made payments on a 4-year-old Nissan Xterra. So let's talk about that now. When the engine went bad in my green Trooper, I bought a parts Trooper to take the engine out of, but then I kind of realized this one was in better shape than my green one, so I built a bumper and put tires on this one, but the frame was rotted on this. Here it is after I finished all the work to it. So I put some super swampers on it. I made this really nice bumper out of C-channel and pipe. This is tubing that I used my tubing bender to bend, but it turned out real good. This was a real quick, simple bumper to do as well, and that's a strong bumper. There it is at the truck pull at the fair. And that's when I first got my crane. I was looking for things to lift up, so I lifted that up. The next vehicle I bought after the Trooper was a 2000 Nissan Xterra, and I bought this thing. It was only a few years old when I bought this. So this was an alright vehicle. It was kind of comparable to the Trooper, but it had a few big things I didn't like about it. One, the main thing I didn't like about it is I actually spent money on this thing. Since it was pretty new, I actually spent like $13,000 on it. And that was a big waste because these things depreciate so quick. Every vehicle before this I've spent pretty much nothing on, and every vehicle after this I've spent almost nothing on. And I've just been a lot happier not spending money on vehicles. You know, like $2,000, $3,000 on average. So I started doing work to this car. One thing I did, I added this winch to the front. So I pretty much made this was a plate I cut out and then just welded it to the frame. And I added these skid plates to it and put these more aggressive tires on it. And then I just cut out the original bumper and slapped it over that winch. And that worked out pretty well. It was nice having that winch on there. And here's that one mud pit we were stuck in another video and got stuck. But then with the winch, I pulled them out. But one thing I didn't like about this car is kind of how delicate it was. All the panels on this thing, the metal was just too thin, and any little thing that hit it would just smash whatever part it was. And I was probably too hard on the thing because I was using the thing as like a tractor. Here's this tree we were pulling out of the ground at my friend's house, and I got it out, but I probably should have bought a tractor or something sooner. One day we were out partying, and my friend had this Ford Explorer, and the thing set itself on fire for no reason. And so I went and used the Xterra and pulled it out of there. All right, so the same day we were up there, and I was right after I put the winch on it. And I was like, well, who wants to get winched down the cliff? And then two of my friends volunteered. They said that sounded like a good idea. So here's just some photos from doing that. Yeah, there's a picture of me pulling it out. Then this guy had like AAA, and he calls him up saying, hey, my car caught on fire and it's up on the mountain. Can you come get it? And they wouldn't come. It was pretty funny, though, his conversation with them. I was like, Tim, you don't tell them it caught on fire. Just say, come pick up my Explorer. I got a flat. Yeah, there he is on the phone with AAA. That was funny.
I think every group of people here was like, is that an Xterra in line?
Now we have Andrew in the 2000 Nissan.
So then I started building a bumper for the thing, and I got it further along than this, but then I kind of hit something and bent it pretty good. And I didn't drive this thing too long. I was just too annoyed with the whole making payments thing. I ended up giving it to my sister, and she took over the payments on it. And then here it is towards the end. I was pretty frustrated with it because anytime anything would get touched on it, it would just get smashed. And whoever designed like the front end and all the body work on this thing, it was just like a joke how it was put together. It was just everything was so delicate and so hard to work on. Now that 10 years has gone by, I've been seeing Xterras. People have been selling them for like $500, just giving them away. These things really did not hold their value. Really, I should have bought a Toyota 4Runner instead. And I actually still have this vehicle. After my sister couldn't get it inspected anymore, she gave it back, and I built this bumper for it, which there's a cool old video on my YouTube channel of me making that bumper, and I put some bigger tires on it and a little bit of a lift kit. All right, another vehicle I had was this 1971 Jeep CJ5. This was something that I bought, I think $200, and I was planning on, it needed a ton of work, didn't run. I was planning on doing like a full restoration on it where I disassembled the entire thing and put it back together the way I wanted it. So the guy I bought this from, he said that they had been plowing with it, but they kept the plow, and it was something that they got out of a junkyard where the floor had completely rusted apart, and then someone had just put these angle iron on here, blocks of wood, and bolted it all back together so the body was at least not falling on top of the transmission. And then they put this roof on here that was like cut off a van or something so they could plow and not have it full of snow. And this looked like a fun vehicle to rebuild. I really liked how simple it was put together. You know, easy it looked to work on. It had a Dauntless V6 engine in it. I never ended up doing this project. I did get this thing kind of running, but I sold it. In anticipation for doing it, our garage, it was always just full of junk, like used as storage. So you can see here's some photos. I was just taking pictures of stuff in there, but it was just a mess. And to do the Jeep project, what I did, I just kind of cleaned it all out. We built this other storage shed, and here it is all done. So I got rid of all the junk that was just being stored in there, put up insulation, drywall, more outlets, ran a 100 amp electric service out here, got some more tools, all this furniture, got a heater in here, and then the garage. Really, I got to credit the Jeep for doing this garage project because I never did the Jeep, but I've done so much work in this garage. And it was so much nicer to work on stuff in there when you can actually walk around, not tripping over stuff, find your tools, have a nice workbench. So that's the best thing about that Jeep. In order for a vehicle to make this video, I kind of felt it needed to be something that I actually drove for a while, because there's a lot of stuff that I just bought in maybe to fix up and sell or didn't have on the road, or even though I never had this on the road, let me just talk about this thing for a while, just because the sheer amount of work I put into this. So this was an early 90s Isuzu pickup. I got this for free. The thing, just the frame was completely rotted out, and my dad and I like rebuilt the whole frame. We had to put a clutch in it, which is a big job, you know, especially laying on the ground doing it, a starter, and then someone had the bed all chopped up. This thing was just this one was way too far gone to try to save, and, you know, we did end up saving it, but my aunt drove it for a couple years, but she kept breaking down and the thing. There's one thing here. You can really see the condition of this garage before I kind of cleaned it out and made it into a nice workshop. But this vehicle here was just, the amount of work my dad and I did to this thing was just way too much. So you can see the back of the cab was cut open, and rebuilt.
This is working.
You know, here's like the frame after we did here's like a new exhaust we did to it. Here's the frame. You can see these are all like fish plates that had to be braced on there, and someone else had already welded this frame up before us. All right, another vehicle we had here was this early 90s Isuzu Amigo. Now, crazy story with getting this one. My dad and I, we actually saw this sitting at an abandoned gas station, and we kind of wanted to, like, oh, the grill off of it. But then we looked into it. The gas station was like going up for taxes, and then we went through all the paperwork with the DMV and with the town to claim the vehicle, and eventually we got the title for it, and were able to put the thing on the road. You know, DMV said, oh, it was never registered in New York. It was kind of a crazy thing. I mean, it was like a junk car. Wasn't really worth much, but we put the work into it and made it into a nice vehicle. And I did drive this for a little while. It's cool being a convertible. It was in decent shape. It wasn't rotted out. One big problem with it, though, it wasn't four-wheel drive. So that was just too frustrating. But But then we finally sold it to one of my dad's friends, and that guy put like over 150,000 more miles on this thing. He drove this thing for years. And next to it here, this is my dad's 89 Dodge Raider that he drove for a bunch of years. We still have it. It needs a transmission, though. That's pretty rotted out. Another truck I had was this early 90s Suzuki Samurai. This thing was pretty cool. It was nice that it was convertible. It was really small and light, but it did do very well off-road. And I had it for a few years. It didn't have a drop of rust on it. And I probably should have kept this thing. And I did off-road it for a while and beat it up a little bit. But actually, before I sold the thing, my dad and I put it back to like perfect condition where we just replaced any part that it needed. Here's even like the back. It had these like upholstery things here that went back, and I cut out this diamond plate here and it riveted it in place and bed lined it. It looked really nice. I had this other one too, and someone actually, one of my dad's friends actually gave this to us, and this is after I did some work to it. It came with a lift kit and these big tires, and I built this bumper and did a bunch of work to this thing to get it ready. It needed a carburetor, and for some reason I just didn't want to spend the $300. I don't know why. You know, I guess because I didn't have a title for it. Sure, I could have got one, but the guy I sold it to said he got it running, and you know, it was, you know, I did spend time making this bumper and everything. This would have been a cool truck. And these are only like a 1.3 liter vehicle. It's almost like having a side-by-side. So this thing was almost a little bit too small, so it wasn't the best everyday vehicle, but it was cool. So there's the motor out right there, and there it is on the bench. I actually rebuilt it. And there's some better photos over here after I built this bumper for it and put the motor back together. Here's one of my friend's Toyotas. We did this bumper together. He had the same welder as me, so like we each, I'd weld something on this side and he'd be welding the exact same part on the other side. It went pretty quick that way. The next vehicle I got was a 98 Jeep Cherokee. This is This is after I'd done some work to it. I got it cheap on eBay because it was really beat up. This bumper was crashed when I got it, so I changed that bumper and the fender and a few other things. And here's some photos off-roading it. And here's in this cool train tunnel in this quarry. Video ripping apart this junk truck with it.
It's not attached. Bed removal. Bed removal. Hold on. Hold on, Andrew. What are you talking about? Well, the cab is off. That's how you're supposed to do it. I read this in a manual. We'll push it back. Also, how to move around the cab is in the Chilton's book.
All right, here's at that guy's house again, loading up more scrap metal. See, I had the winch on the front, and we were able to pick up like engine blocks and get it on the trailer. Using that Jeep to haul gravel for a while too. I was putting 2 tons of gravel in this trailer, and the trailer weighed 1,000 pounds, so it was a 5,000 pound trailer. But that Jeep pulled it fine, and that was the floor for my shed. Look at Levi the puppy right there. So one thing I did with this Jeep, I kept a really good track of the paperwork. So you can see here, this was like an expense report right here. So you can see here's like when I first got it in January 2006, paid $960 for it. There's the receipt. Remember, my dad and I drove down to the city and got this. And the listing pretty much said Jeep runs and drives good, in really rough shape from being used off-road.
But then every repair I did to this thing, I wrote down here. So you can see with this Jeep, the amount of stuff I had to do to this thing was, some of this stuff was like initial repairs, like tune-up, cap rotor, brake pads, wheel bearings, tires, put a hitch on it, radiator, that was all overheating, so I changed all the cooling system stuff, the sway bar, headlights. Jeez, look at the list on this thing. And yeah, so geez, look how quick a $960 car turned into a $4,600 car. Let's check out some of these receipts. So that was neat, keeping really good track of the paperwork like that. I haven't been doing this for other vehicles, but, well, I haven't been fixing my other vehicles like this either. I mean, that Mitsubishi I've had longer, and I've had this, and it's got more miles on it. And if I was keeping this list on my Mitsubishi, it'd be like this long. You know, it'd be like 4 things on there. I guess that's what you get when you buy a Jeep. You get to make a 3-leaf binder with a table of contents for the repairs. This is probably the cleanest picture of it, and this is later on in having it. So things, I put this brush guard on it. I put these nice rockers on there. This thing didn't have any rust on it, but it was pretty beat up. And I had changed a ton of parts on this thing just to keep it running. Now, I pretty much bought this Jeep for delivering mail. I delivered a lot of mail out of this thing. It was still a left-hand drive vehicle, so I kind of cut the center console out and was sitting pretty much between the 2 seats with my tray of mail on the driver's seat, and then I could reach out the passenger window to get to the mailboxes. And this was a good car for delivering mail. The 4-liter engine in this thing had a ton of power. This thing could really accelerate fast. And this was a good car until I slowed down to make a left-hand turn, and this old lady was behind me and she was looking elsewhere, she said, and ran right into the back of me. And I even saw her coming, and I stepped on the gas again, which I'm sure lessened the accident, but it was, either way, this is the result of it. So you can see, and now the scary thing with this accident, I had a load of steel in the back of the truck, but I was thinking, like, in case I get rear-ended, I put it in there like diagonal, so it wouldn't, but it like stabbed through the roof. Yeah, see, it kind of bent the thing up, but see, like the metal had stabbed right through the roof of the car, one of the pieces. So that's one thing, whenever you're loading a car, always be conscious of what the load would do in an accident. So I probably would have kept driving this thing. The problem is, it wouldn't start for some reason after this accident. I'm not sure why. Some people said, oh, it's got some kind of inertia switch that makes it not start. But I actually stretched it back out again with this winch, and here's a video of it.
It's going. Only thing is, I think you need to start the TJ.
Hey, the door opened. I think you can actually use the door now.
Hey, it's almost straight.
Yeah, here it is stretched out. Look at that thing. That's like, you know, a couple dents on the side. I could maybe throw a new rear hatch on it. And, you know, if this thing had kept running, I probably would have just kept driving it like that. But I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't start. I mean, I didn't look into it too much, but I did. This motor did end up in my Jeep Wrangler, which I'm going to talk about next after when the Jeep Wrangler blew up. So this motor did live again. And here I am finally scrapping it after selling so much stuff off of it. And there's my Dodge pickup before I painted it one color. But yeah, you could see, I mean, the engine and the motor and all that was gone. Since this one was in an accident, I ended up just getting another one of these Jeeps because these things are pretty cheap. This was another 98, same thing. This one was a police car before I got it though, so I had a cool few police options on it. And then I moved some of my parts over, like I put this brush guard on it, my headlight screens. Okay, so this blue Cherokee, I did keep delivering mail in this thing, but then I quit the post office, or I quit doing that rural carrying where I had to use my own vehicle shortly after. This one was nice. It had the part-time and full-time transfer case, so that all-wheel drive was pretty nice in this one that the green one didn't have. One thing I did do with this, I used this a lot for hauling scrap metal. This was right when I built this trailer, and that was before I had my F250 to tow the trailer, so I put a brake controller in this, and I was towing these huge loads of scrap metal with this thing. Now, with its 4-liter engine, this thing had a lot of power. Look how skinny Lacey looks there. Jeez. Levi looks the same, though. A little skinnier, but... But yeah, this thing, I hauled so many loads of scrap metal with this Jeep. And, you know, the trailer, I mean, that trailer empty weighs a little over a ton, plus some of the loads were more than that. But, you know, I just had to drive the thing smart, you know, especially with the trailer. Brakes worked really well, so it drove pretty good. But, you know, there's a decent load right there. There's a car. And some of these loads were fun loading them up because I'd use this winch to load everything. So I'd winch cars up, and then I'd use a combination of pulleys and chains, and because like obviously that engine block, I didn't lift that up there by hand. I think I put like a pulley up on a tree or something to winch that up in the air. And here's like another one. I remember getting like $450 for that Bronco. And there's another car I got. There's another one. My friend's dad gave me that. Yeah, there it is, looking pretty good there. That was a cool setup, that Jeep with that trailer and that winch. I still use this trailer plenty. So this Jeep was pretty good. I was still doing the typical Jeep repairs to keep the thing running, you know, like axles and brakes and just stuff on the axles pretty much. But what killed this one was Hurricane Irene. A big tree fell on it, and it even bent like the whole car. Yeah, here's another photo. You could see the tree that hit this thing. I mean, it still probably would have driven after this, but it kind of bent the whole car. So at least I had insurance on this one. The key word is comprehensive. I didn't have comprehensive on my other 3 vehicles that got hit by a tree, which sucked because I didn't get any money for them at all. This one, at least I had that. So, and they gave me enough money to buy another one of these Jeeps. These things weren't that much money though. But, you know, I enjoyed this car when I was driving it. After having that first Jeep Cherokee for a while, it kind of made me want a Jeep Wrangler, especially since I gave up on fixing the 2 completely rusted out Jeeps I had. So I bought this. It's a 1998 Jeep Wrangler, had the 4-liter engine and the 5-speed transmission. And when I got this thing, it was pretty much in perfect condition. I think I paid $6,000 for it. The previous owner had taken really good care of it. I probably should have bought one that was more beat up because I knew I was going to beat it up. And it didn't take long for me to start beating this thing up pretty good. So here's like the second day of owning it. I was off-roading with a bunch of friends, and back in this train station in the woods here. And this place was pretty cool. It was like this giant quarry with this big tunnel to go through. What does it say? 1920 something? Okay, so on our way out of this place, we were flying down this one trail. Now this trail, it's a twisty, tight trail, but I'd usually run the 4-wheelers down this trail, like 5th gear, full throttle, flying. This was a pretty fun trail up in here. So I'm coming down this trail. All of a sudden, look at that rock right there. And someone had even painted it orange because of the way it sticks out in the trail, but so I hit that rock. So what happened is it popped the tire, it pushed the axle back. So this thing had 4-link suspension in it with coil springs. The top control arm bent up like a pretzel, and the bottom one, the mount, ripped off the axle. Yeah, you can see the bottom mount here ripped off. So I didn't take any photos of fixing this, but what I did is I replaced the top control arm, and I got a new lower mount and welded it onto the axle where it's supposed to be, and I got that fixed up. Then the next day, one of my friends calls me. She said that she was stuck in this mud pit, and someone went to try to get her out. He got stuck, and then there's 2 trucks stuck. So I went there. I got both of them out, and every truck was on pavement. Nobody was stuck. I was like, all right, we're fine. Let's just not continue this because it was just mud. Then, of course, like, we leave, and then I'm like, well, let me go try out this other trail. So I'm in there going all right for a while, but then all of a sudden, the thing breaks through, like, the layer of grass and sinks. So then I call one of my friends who's got some super swampers. I'm like, Jared, come pull me out. And he got me out, but then he got stuck. And then I'm like, all right, I'll pull you out. And I went to pull them out. Then I got stuck again. Turned into a thing where we just kept calling people, and people would come and they'd get trucks out of the mud, but then ultimately get stuck somewhere else. And it pretty much ended up being, it was like at least 8 trucks in there, and every one of them had gotten stuck probably 4 times. So these are the photos of the next day. This is how we decided to solve this problem. So this is what we did. My Trooper wasn't running at the time, but I had those Super Swamper Bogger tires on it, and those tires are awesome. So we took those tires and put them on one of my friend's girlfriend's trucks, because it was 6-lug. It bolted right on. It was a Chevy half-ton. So with these tires on this truck was actually getting everything out of the mud, and it was doing a pretty good job doing it. And we had gotten most of the trucks out of the mud. But the mud in this place, see, it was different than a lot of the other trails around here. A lot of the trails are rock. This place, there's not a rock in there. And there was like no trees to winch to, and then you'd break through the mud, and it wasn't like dry sections. Like once the truck kind of got down into the mud layer, that was it. It was just stuck. You had to go really fast to get through anything. So yeah, but this truck was doing really well with these tires. That was cool. Here's stuff out of the mud. There's the Montero out. And then, that was out. That pulled it out. This Chevy was doing real good with these tires, pulling everyone out until we got that stuck. And that sucked because that was like, oh, this is the truck that's pulling everything out, and now it's stuck. The Montero pulled it out. But yeah, once something with Super Swampers gets stuck, they dig holes quick. Yeah, look at that thing. Yeah, we were like jacking everything up and putting mats underneath the tires. And this was like 2 days of just getting trucks out of the mud. But then here's the thing about it. Like, people would keep getting stuck even after they were already out. Like, this is probably this guy's 3rd time getting stuck. All right, so this was like the first guy that I called to come help us. And we thought he was going to pull us all out because he had some nice tires on this Blazer. And he went down this dead-end trail. He didn't have any reverse in this thing. So he ended up just in this thicket of trees, and he was just plowing through stuff until eventually he couldn't go forward anymore, and then couldn't go backwards. So we have, look at the trail he made. Yeah, there's my Jeep finally out of the mud. But I didn't have good tires at the time, so it was so hard to do anything with it. All right, so then finally we backed this truck down in there to pull out the no reverse Blazer. And it wouldn't move. Finally, what ended up happening, once the Super Swamper Chevy wouldn't pull out the Blazer, we hooked something else to it, still wouldn't move. And we hooked something else, hooked something else. We finally hooked 4 trucks together and pulled that Chevy out backwards. Yeah, there he is. Finally got him out. That was an interesting 2 days. So after being stuck in the mud for 2 days, I ordered a set of Super Swampers for this. And that made such a big difference. The first set was 31s. That was with no lift or anything. And they worked really well. Those are definitely the tires to get for going through mud. So I pretty much only bought this Jeep for off-road, and I did get a lot of use out of it. So we'd go off-road and go camping all the time. A lot of my friends were going off-roading at the time too. There's that white Trooper I gave to this guy. He actually drove this for a while. There's one year at the truck pull with the Jeep. I remember this was a good day off-road. There's this one mountain trail up by my house, and it is really hard to get up. And I made it up here at the Jeep. Not totally easily, but... This was a fun day off-road, and I remember to get that tire back on the bead, I actually poured some gas in it out of my chainsaw and lit it with a match and blew it back on. And it worked the first try. And then there's blowing it back up with electric compressor. It was definitely a fun day. There's more days camping. All right, so here we are going up that trail again, and this night we did not make it. I ended up, like, the steepness of these trails don't show through photos, but and I probably would have made it. This is what happened. The tie rod broke for like no reason. I wasn't even doing anything. It just snapped. It was like the thinnest metal. So what we ended up having to do was go up there the next day with, we loaded a yeah, there, that's where the spot where it ended up. Yeah, you can see a good broken there. So we ended up bringing my friend's Montero up there with this generator in the back and a welder, and I welded it back together and drove it home like that. Yeah, there's the welder right there. We had a hard time getting the Montero up these hills, though. That's a really steep trail. We had to winch him a few times. Okay, here's another day camping. I remember that was the last day of this Pathfinder, too. That's one thing about Nissans. They are just so delicate. So we, of that night, that Nissan was looking decent. Yeah, it's still looking decent. Up like Kilkenbergers and stuff. There's that Chevy stuck. All right, yeah, look at this Nissan by the end of the day. The thing just crumpled up like tinfoil. Yeah, and then I was pushing them out because like something happened. It wouldn't run right. Didn't have any power. It was running, it didn't have any power. And the back of the car ended up the same way. Oh, and then this guy too. He's going down this steep hill in this Chevy, and he loses brakes. And I'm following him, trying to keep up, and he slams into this tree. It was probably the same hill. I had my Samurai that day, but this guy in this Jeep who would always talk about how good he was at off-road, and he was back in here with us. And he never actually went off-road, and he just talked about it. And like his stuff just fell apart so quick. Like his thing just kept breaking. We kept having to wait for him. And then like his battery fell off and smashed his distributor, and we had to like tape that all back together. And he ends up down off one of these trails, like so stuck. Like it was ridiculous. And it took us like all night to get his Jeep out of there, and just the thing just kept falling apart. And one of my friends, it was this guy, he was stuck on his 4Runner, but he wasn't stuck. He said, no, I'm not getting stuck. He drove all around him, smashed that 4Runner up so much, but he got the thing out. It was pretty funny. We were like changing the radiator in the woods because this guy didn't want to, he was trying to save this engine for something. Look how smashed up this thing got though. So then my front bumper was kind of getting smashed up. I started making one myself. So there's just the, there's just kind of mocking stuff up. I was at my friend's house. He made a pretty legitimate motocross track back in there. All right, so here is the bumper all finished. That turned out really good, that bumper. And this was at a trade school called BOCES, and it was a program where you could learn how to work on cars, but the cool thing about it was you could bring in your own cars to work on them. So it was a suspension and steering class. So I brought in my Jeep with this lift kit. So this is why I chose this lift kit. I didn't want to lift my Jeep because it makes them flip over so easy. It's nice having them low. It had ample ground clearance anyway. But the reason I went with this lift kit because it came with new springs, because my original springs they just lost the springiness to them, and they would just bottom out for no reason. And it came with new lower control arms because all my lower control arms were like bent up like pretzels. Just because they were such a weird design. It was like this curved piece of metal. It was stupid. At least these round ones stayed straight. So that was day one. We got the front, the whole class worked on it. It was a lot of fun. We got the front installed. That was a cool group of people in that class too. And that's with the lift kit installed. I didn't want the thing any higher, but gave it a little more ground clearance. It was only like a 2.5-inch lift, but at least that fixed the bad spring issue. I used to pull a lot of people out of the mud too. That Jeep did really good in the mud with those tires. Like I remember this one night, they called me to pull this car out of some field. I actually got this plow with that CJ7, and I didn't buy like the kit. I made all these brackets. So I welded these big ears onto the frame, and then this was the bracket from the CJ7, and I just kind of put it under there with a jack where it was supposed to be, and then just welded all these mounts up. And that worked fine. I never had any issues with that. Just a pump I brought from Northern Hydraulics. The mistake I made with this, though, was that this plow, it could only lift it up and down, and you had to get out to angle it. And I put up with that, but I should have just got one that had the automatic angle, too. But I had everything painted up, made it all look like brand new. There's my bumper at these rebar ends. That was a really strong bumper. There's the mount. There's the controller for it. Since both these vehicles are parked next to each other, let me just kind of do like a review comparison of what I liked and didn't like about each one. The Trooper, I definitely favor the Trooper over the Jeep. A few bad things about the Trooper. The 2.6-liter engine was kind of underpowered, and they had an issue with the head gaskets blowing. The Jeep's 4-liter engine had much more power, and it was a better engine. But everything else in the Trooper was considerably better. The transmission shifted much better. The suspension was much better. The independent suspension on the Trooper was... Now, this starts arguments easy, but because people are always trying to say, oh, solid axles are the way to go for off-roading. I don't know what those people are talking about. Because if you were to take this truck, the Trooper, and the Jeep and race them down a bumpy trail, the Trooper will easily double the speed of the Jeep, even with its underpowered engine. It just handles bumps so much better. Like the Jeep will kind of like bounce out of control, and the Trooper, you can almost drive the thing like a four-wheeler where you're hitting jumps with it, getting it airborne, but the thing will maintain control. I mean, yes, the longer wheelbase helps with that too, but independent suspension is definitely the way to go. The suspension and axles in the Trooper were tremendously stronger than in the Jeep. You know, you could see they're bolted on with 6 lugs, and never once in the Trooper did I ever have to do like a ball joint or tie rod end or a CV shaft or any of that stuff. It would just, could just run the thing so hard, and you'd put it up on the lift and do a shakedown, and the thing wouldn't have a drop of play in it. The Jeep, you'd be changing parts on this thing every time you looked at it, like wheel bearings, axle shafts. I must have changed every part on that front axle multiple times. Now, the other thing about Jeeps, people try to say, oh, they're good because they have such a big aftermarket support. And you could take, there's catalogs you can open up, and there's 4 different companies selling a heavy-duty version of every part on this vehicle. That doesn't mean it's a good vehicle. That means it's a piece of junk. If there was heavy-duty parts for this Trooper, no one would buy them because you don't need those parts. The things are ready fine from the factory. So it's better. You could see how like the front of this thing was like sloped. So when you'd crash into things with it, it would just kind of push up and over. The Jeep, what would happen is you'd hit that axle on stumps or anything, and it would just bend all the control arms on the thing. I must have changed those control arms a few times where it rips the mounts right off the axle. And then what happens with the Jeep, like say you hit something with this front axle, it rips off the mounts, and then it pushes the drive shaft and breaks the transfer case. I've seen a few people do that. And the Trooper, it didn't matter. You could just plow through stuff and ignore everything that was happening. The thing's like a tank. Here's that CJ7 I got that plow from. So I don't know why I bought this. I think I just kind of bought it for the plow. It wasn't that much money. But it was so rusted out. Like, look at this thing. The body literally just like fell down on top of the frame. So just kind of, we were just ripping apart that CJ7 for fun.
One more of those.
Yeah, I think that last one will get it. Yeah, what's left of a CJ7, not too much.
One cool thing about the Trooper, you could just drive the thing over anything and it wouldn't break. If you did that with the Jeep, the oil pan would have been smashed, maybe the transmission, and definitely the drive shafts. This was, I think, one of the first snowfalls of the year, the first time testing the snowplow, and that worked pretty good. Here's Levi doing a little snowplowing. But here's one thing that people like down south don't get. Like, see how the entire vehicle is white? That's salt. And that rust out these, like, this Jeep didn't have any rust on it when I got it, and like 1 or 2 seasons of salt getting on it pretty much destroys the vehicle. Like, this thing's pretty rotted out from the salt. They really should be made rust proof, which wouldn't be hard to do. There's Levi. This Tacoma was nice. I should have bought one of those. Those are nice trucks. I had my winch set up on this receiver, so this is the same winch from every photo. It could go in any of these 2-inch receivers, so front of truck, back of truck, on the trailer, anywhere. That's a good way to have the winch, because then it's not stuck. First, when I first had that winch on the Xterra, what it did was it added too much weight to the front, and driving around was fine, but if you're hitting jumps and stuff, that little bit of extra weight would make the thing bottom out way too easy. So one of my friends got this this little car for free, and I didn't have a car trailer at this point, and I like winched it on top of this tiny 5x8 trailer, and yeah, look at that thing there. That was funny. This is what made me get a double axle trailer, because it was just, you couldn't put cars on the thing. I mean, if you put cars on it, it was like that. Listen to the motor.
Keep doing stuff.
All right.
Is that it?
Hit one jump with this thing and the motor died. That's always a good way to tell how good a car is. Like, if you start hitting jumps with it, see how long it lasts. Some cars, they will die instantly. Junk, like Dodge Neon, piece of garbage. I'll just talk about Woods cars quick. This really should go back earlier in this video, but so I was driving cars well before I had my license. One of my friend's dads had a tow truck business where he would take away a lot of junk cars, so he'd always have junk cars around. And my friend and we just had this endless supply of junk cars, and he didn't care what we did with these cars. The rule was just it had to be back at the parking lot so he could get it with his flatbed. And we just had all these cars. We'd take them in the woods, crash them into things, and we're like 13 years old, just crashing like an endless supply of cars. That was so much fun. I definitely think that's a real good way to get good at driving. There's another fun way to like test what kind of cars were good or not, because some cars you'd get them, like this Dodge Neon, the thing would last 5 minutes. Like, oh man, Dodges make crappy cars and make fun of them. Then sometimes you'd get a car and the thing will last like days, maybe even weeks. And then you'd kind of say, oh, that's a good car. So some models, like I remember having a Ford Bronco one time that we were crashing into everything and the thing lasted forever. It was amazing. I remember even a Ford Escort one time, indestructible. That car was amazing.
Flip it. Faster. You got it.
Montero, Neon. Oh, carnage!
All right, so we ended up junking this thing. Another funny thing we did though was I couldn't get it on my trailers again. A friend and I, we actually sawzalled this car in half and brought it to the junkyard in half. All right, here's another day. We got 2 more junk cars.
Give him a push, Camerata. Oh yeah, he's out. Ah. Oh! 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 Look at that, bottomed out like crazy. Oh man, that was an awesome angle on that shot. Oh! He just flipped over! Yeah! Oh! Oh my God, that's sweet, man!
You got that on video?
Yeah!
You got that on video? Oh my God!
Oh, I'm gonna crush the hood. Oh, watch out!
Let's push it. Come forward. Jake, you holding it? Yeah.
Unhook it. Well, hold on, Max.
Unhook his Jeep.
Unhook the Jeep.
All right, go.
Help him push it.
I can't, dude. I got a bad back. Look over.
Oh, son of a bitch. Oh.
Hit it. Hit it. Oh, you don't have to. Oh, that is done, I think. Oh, no, it's not. It's just burning oil like crazy. Oh man! Oh, that's so good. Oh, I need that on my phone.
All right, Camerata, do it up.
All right, go.
Oh my! Push him over. Oh yeah, here we go. Your toe ball's keeping him over.
Hit him from the back.
Oh.
All right, hang on, Jarrett.
It just doesn't want to go over. It just doesn't want to go over.
November 2007. This is probably as nice as this vehicle ever looked. This was right after getting another set of Super Swamper tires. These ones were 32, but they were extra narrow. And they were nice, those narrow tires. They really kind of bit down through the snow and mud. And I definitely recommend the narrow tires. 2008, this is me making a new back bumper because the original one was getting all smashed up. So that's like the mounts for it. And there it is all finished up. So that turned out pretty good. This one, you know, that wasn't going to get damaged even after hitting stuff. Had the 2-inch receiver built right into it. My original receiver actually bent the thing right off of there. My friend got his Nissan truck stuck on this hill here, so I helped him out getting him unstuck.
That worked. Pretty good.
Yeah, that's it.
Classic. He's probably gonna hit it like 20.
Every one of these guys are stacked with hate.
No on Camerata. Here we go. Oh my God.
It's still stuck.
Uh-oh.
You don't have, that doesn't have 4, right? What was wrong with that before? Yeah. Oh, it was always like that?
You don't need a radiator. Yeah, I don't know about it now.
Tell him to hit it the other way. Straighten that out.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
That did run really great.
He's still gonna do it.
Look at your bed. Hey, no, you're still not bad.
Yeah, you're into the bank now.
Happy bumper he's got there. Hey, don't buy a Nissan.
No, I don't think so. Well, that was short-lived destruction, Will.
Yanking the cat off the radiator off, right? Yanking the cat off at least, right? Oh, I don't have the cat.
Jesus Christ.
Man, I'm taking 2 weeks. Is it really? Yeah, go to... They told me they weren't giving me any money down there today. I bought 5 of them down. This was pretty funny. This was in my friend's driveway. Then all of a sudden, you know, this car is upside down on fire, and and his dad comes home and we're all just standing there like nothing's going on. That was a pretty fun day. Yeah, that Nissan, that thing rusted, like the front suspension just rusted apart on that thing. That's why we were just crashing into it. Here's a pretty good story with this camper. This camper was free, and we actually a bunch of people tried to get it, and it was like down this cliff. And we had like, I wish there was some videos. There was like 6 trucks there, all hooked to each other, trying to pull this thing up this cliff. It was stupid. So then finally, I went back a few months later and didn't tow it up the cliff, and I actually got it. But I towed that home with the Jeep. And I shouldn't even have taken this camper because these people were like hoarders, and this entire thing was full to the roof in garbage. I remember spending a few $100s just bringing all the garbage to the dump. But that was a lot of weight to tow home with that Jeep. I remember even doing it. The front drive shaft broke on the axle for like the 4th time. Those were not strong enough. But people are always trying to say these rear axles, the Dana 35 wasn't strong enough. I had this thing in 4-wheel drive low, which with the front axle broken is 2-wheel drive low, and I was spinning these tires in the dirt with tons of weight on the back end, and I had a locker in the rear of this thing. That locker worked really well, and I went from like dirt to pavement, and I never had a single. One thing I gotta say about the Jeep, I never had a single problem with that Dana 35 rear axle. And if you go on the forums and stuff, people are always saying, "Oh, the rear axle's the weak one, and the front one's the strong one." Here's just crashing into another junk car. But the way these cars just fold up, I mean, it's just like tinfoil. It's really important to have strong bumpers because then you can just, the vehicles are so much safer because it's like they don't crumple up like junk. Here, so my friend came over with this Blazer. But look, this was a cool truck. He had some good tires on it. Wait, is he stuck? I don't think he is.
Yeah, he is. Look at his tire.
No, wait, watch him go forward. Watch him go forward.
You should just hit him.
I'll hit him. Wait, I gotta hit the front though, slide it. Wait, I would get him unstuck.
No,
He's out, he's out.
Nah.
Alright, fly in reverse now. Full drive is working now, that's cool.
That is very cool. Alright, let's
Nice.
go.
Nice.
I guess we're heading right back out, huh?
Maybe it's on fire.
I think it's on fire. What did he do?
Yeah, so that's why it's important to have bumpers, because this tree did all this damage. If he had had a good bumper on there, he would have just driven over that tree. His driver door stopped opening, and he got mad at it and tried to open it with a hatchet. And then, all right, this is the day I lost reverse. So then, like, I tried driving, and it's so annoying not having reverse because you hit stuff and can't back up.
plenty of exhaust.
Yeah, we're really getting far on this one. Sorry, guys.
So I couldn't back up because my transmission was bad, and he's trying to like push me backwards. But I think his whole car was bad at this point, so.
Whoa.
That sounded good.
I finally had to cut that tree down because I couldn't back up away from it. The transmission went in that Jeep, and I bought and I had to have another standard, so I bought a Jeep Cherokee with a standard, and I didn't feel like laying under the car to get it out, so I just kind of sledgehammered the dash apart in this thing and then sawzalled the entire floor out. And then that was a really easy transmission to remove after I cut the whole floor out like this. Usually that's a hard job to get a Look at that. That's like the easiest transmission you ever do right there. They should just, you know what? They should just make this whole panel removable in trucks. And you could do a transmission in like an hour. Yeah, so this transmission ended up fixing it. But then, there it is removed. Okay, check out what I had to do to make this transmission fit, though. So since it was out of a Cherokee, it was kind of different. So I had to use my bell housing. Here's the transmission out of the Cherokee that was bad in mine. And I had to use this piece out of the TJ. And then I used the transfer case out of my green Cherokee because something was wrong with the transfer case in the Wrangler. And that was the same thing too. I had to put a new engine in that Wrangler at one point, and I took the engine out of my green Cherokee, but they were the same engine, but a lot of stuff was different. So when I had them both out, I put them next to each other, and it was just a bunch of parts had to come from the one engine to the other engine to make it fit. And even, I don't know why companies got to change parts all the time, too. Even the input, I guess this is the pilot shaft of the transmission where it sleeves into the engine was even different size a little bit, and I had to have this special bushing made to adapt to that older transmission to the Wrangler. Here's installing the transmission on the Wrangler. And I also had to fix my oil pan, too. I kind of put this skid plate on the bottom of it, and there's extra parts. All right, with this Jeep, I also kept really good track of the paperwork. Actually, I was trying to keep track of all my vehicles. So we got CJ5, CJ7. Oh, that came off eBay, 356. Okay, Samurai, Trooper. Here's the one I really kept track of. All right, so this page here, this was kind of like an expense report. So here's like bill of sale. I paid $5,600 for it in May 2006. Everything I did to it price-wise ended up on this page. I was taking off money for plowing. More interesting, here is all the work I did to it. So I remember when I first got it, I had to put the radio back in it. And fixed axle. That was, I think I crashed it like the first day I had the thing. I hit a rock. And I got super swampers. Pretty quick. Let's see, replace, yeah, the manifold I remember broke for no reason. Put a new one on. What else? Tie rod broke for no reason. Change the wheel. Those were cool. There we go. There's a finished installing the snowplow. There's a radiator. I was having trouble with it overheating from the snowplow. Turns out the clutch fan was bad, and I changed like the radiator and everything, which it didn't need. One here, 2009, replaced engine. Here's the first time I flipped this thing over, too. I was crashing into this junk car here. That was a pretty fun day. My friend had this. It was like some kind of Nissan Sentra or something. And it was running for a while, but then it stopped running, and we were just towing it and pushing it. And my friend was steering it, and I was pushing him, and all of a sudden, like, he lost steering or something and crashed into a tree, and his airbags went off in his face, and, like, the Jeep drove, like, right through the trunk and pushed the trunk right into the back seat. It just shows how delicate these cars were. But then I'm crashing into it, and one time, instead of crashing into it, the tire drove up over it and flipped this thing on its side, like, really fast. It was kind of funny, though. Everyone there thought it was funny. I did, too. Didn't hurt nothing. and we just tipped it back over by hand. This here was the day I closed on my property, and within an hour of buying that property, I was up in there. I had the Jeep. I plowed the hole. There was a trail where the driveway was, so I plowed that all out, and then I towed this camper in there. I got this camper to go behind my Jeep, too. This was fun bringing this to, like, parties when we go out camping, and instead of, like, sleeping on a car or tent or somewhere crazy, I had, like, this little house that I could bring with me. This was before I did some work to it. I actually put a lift kit in it and bigger tires as well, and it was the same. It actually took the same tires as the Jeep, so that was nice. Like, I could share a spare tire. So this is kind of what did this Jeep in, was hitting this jump. I mean, it kind of bent the front axle a lot, and I just kind of got tired of fixing it. Right now, so I still have this Jeep right there. That bent the axle. That wouldn't have bent the axle on the Trooper. But anyway, so right now it needs a front axle, and that's not me. I still have this Jeep, but as it sits right now, it kind of needs a new front axle, being that the front one, it got so bent from hitting that jump, and I put an I-beam under it and chained down the ends and used the bottle jack and actually got it pretty straight again, but then it broke the axle shafts inside the axle, so it just needs a new axle. But really, it needs a stronger axle. That Dana 30 axle isn't worth installing in there again, so to revive it, it would need 2 new axles because the gear ratio would be different. And I'm sure it's got some sitting problems. I know some brake lines rusted out and the clutch master and slave cylinder were bad, but this thing is revivable. I had a lot of fun for years, though, with this vehicle.
After driving for years and having to buy so many different vehicles because they always prematurely wear out, and I always kind of thought how a vehicle could be designed so it would last forever instead of, you know, having a 12-year life or so, like the vehicles they sell now is. And the reason I'm talking about this UTV here is because they're doing a lot of the things that I think could transfer over to larger vehicles, which would really improve the quality of their construction. So looking at a normal truck here, you can see there's a lot of design flaws that come out right away. The whole body on this thing is just made out of pressed sheet metal where they stamp it into these ridiculous shapes to shape this thing, and there's a lot of problems with doing that. One, it's really heavy, and anytime that gets touched, it gets smashed up, plus it rusts out way too quickly. That was one thing that was good about the Jeep, at least. Instead of having pointless curvy shapes down the whole body, which gets smashed instantly, the whole thing was flat, and it really held up a lot better, because one, it's a lot easier to repair because you could just cut out any damage, but two, since it's not bubbling out, it doesn't get smashed. Steel is not an appropriate material for auto bodies just because it's too heavy and it's too delicate, and it wears out too quickly from corrosion. And this is very common here too, where the rocker panels just turn into complete rust and break apart, and this has even been repaired years ago. I mean, this will generally happen in a little over 10 years. This is just made wrong. Really, any vehicle in this condition, the automaker should just have to replace the truck for free. That would stop this real quick. Here's the frame in this thing. And the frame's not too bad. Usually the Dodge frames don't rust out too quick. Usually the transmission goes first. Actually, that's what killed this one too. I'll show you on this Isuzu Trooper an example of a rusted out frame here. Rusted the frame is on this, like it's literally gone. This is supposed to be frame right there. So this one actually is pretty good in the back. That's why I braced up the center here and was able to get some more years out of this thing. Not on the road, I was just driving this thing through the woods, but the frame shouldn't do this. So when you go over to this vehicle, you can see it doesn't have those issues with the corrosion and dents. The entire body is made out of a flexible plastic, which is a lot lighter. It won't ever rust and it won't ever dent. So 10 years ago, I designed what I thought was the perfect auto chassis. So instead of the entire body being made out of pressed sheet metal, the whole thing could be a tube chassis vehicle instead, where all the corners of the vehicle are actually the frame of the vehicle. That way it wouldn't get smashed up every time it touches something, and it'd probably be much cheaper to build. And when I've mentioned this before in other videos, people say, oh, wouldn't be good because it wouldn't crumple in an accident. No, this could still be made to crumple. So what could be is this section could bolt off the frame right here and here. And in that way, even when the thing gets in a serious accident, it wouldn't take much work to get it back on the road again. You know, the whole thing would be built so it never rusted out. It'd be designed so it's really simple to work on. Even an amateur mechanic would be able to do any repair to this vehicle quickly. And then once the design is made, we'd sell the truck for 30, 40 years without changing anything on it. So that was always something I wanted to do. It just kind of seemed like a bit too much work. What I was going to do was use like that CJ5 chassis or something that was already simple and old, and then just build what I thought a better body was. Make it much stronger, make it so it never rusts out. And there's already people kind of doing this, making these nice tube chassis, either rock trucks or whatever they're calling them, but the problem is they're not practical vehicles. They're just like vehicles meant for a special event, which, yeah, that's neat and all, but it's effectively kind of a pointless vehicle. If you make a practical truck that can actually carry stuff and just is something a normal person would want, it'd make a lot of sense to mass produce them. And even the companies that are selling these side-by-side vehicles, all you'd have to do is make this thing bigger, and it could be a really cool pickup truck, make it road legal. You know, if this was like a 3/4 ton truck instead of a golf cart, this would be a really cool truck. Check out the Bollinger B1 and B2. That's a new auto company trying to get started, where they made some really simple, nice looking work trucks that don't have all the plastic and nonsense features that are kind of plaguing new vehicles. You know, I really hope to see that company succeed with getting those on the road.
Since I was spending so much time towing that heavy trailer with that Jeep, which wasn't really meant to tow that trailer, I started looking for 3/4 ton pickup trucks, and I eventually got this 96 F250. I got this at an auction. I think I paid a little over $3,000 for it. It came with a Fisher plow, had the 351 gas engine, automatic transmission. Here it is when I first got it. It's looking pretty cool here. I put these Humvee tires on there, but I didn't have them on there that long. And this was a good truck for a while. It certainly towed this trailer much better than the Jeep, because it was meant to tow trailers like that. Here's me doing the truck pull 1 year with this truck. And I drove this truck a couple years, used it for towing that trailer and plowing. It was a good truck for a while, but then towards the end, it really turned into a lemon. I just couldn't keep the thing running. Kept having problems where things were breaking apart from rust. You know, the thing was, even though it looked nice, it was so rusted out. Plus, like, it was like repair after repair. Then finally, it was like a few major repairs in a row, and I did them. And then the transmission broke in half. And then I was even looking for transmissions, and people were asking ridiculous money for them, and I'm done. I sold it with a bad transmission. I think I still got like $1,600 though. The guy said he was going to fix it that I sold it to. And then I got this, and then I got a really good deal on a Dodge diesel. Here's a truck I had for a few years. This was a 1970 AM General M35 A2. It's a 2.5 ton military truck. It had the multi-fuel inline 6-cylinder turbo engine, which could run on diesel or gas or kerosene. This is something I paid like $4,500 for. It only had 8,000 miles on it, and it was in really good shape. It didn't have any rust. And this was a pretty cool truck. I did drive it for a while. This was like the day I got it here. Here it is. I took it to the fair. I did the truck pull with it and had my Jeep in the back of it. I did do some work with this thing. Here's when I bought my backhoe. I borrowed this trailer from my friend and used this truck to pull the backhoe home. So that was pretty cool because none of the other trucks I had at the time were able to do that. And then here's another thing I was able to do with this truck. This RV was free, and a bunch of people knew about it, and they all wanted it, but it was down this really steep, long hill, and like a pickup truck couldn't do it. So finally, I went there with the Army truck and one of my friends steering it, and I was able to use the Army truck to pull this camper right up the hill, and I got this free camper with it. All right, so one pretty bad thing that happened with this truck. This was Hurricane Irene, I think 2011, and a big pine tree fell on it, right down the whole truck, and hit it. You know, it was like a direct hit, perfect hit. Actually, pine trees fell like on everything. My yard was a little bit of a disaster after Hurricane Irene, but yeah, this really shows it good here. Look at the size of this. That was a big tree too. A nice trailer, and there's my Dodge right here, my nice diesel. I'll talk about that in another. All right, yeah, here it is with the tree off of it. But that didn't kill this truck. I fixed it. It really wasn't that bad. It took a few hours. I went and got some parts off a parts truck. I got a new windshield. Oh, there it is, all fixed. So I got a new windshield, new doors. I got a new soft top. I got the wood frame out of it, and all I pretty much did, I went in the truck, the dash got bent down. All I did was I took a bottle jack and I just jacked the dash back up to where it was supposed to be. I used the mini excavator to kind of bend the door frames back into place. I used a sledgehammer, popped the hood back up. Okay, and you can see the dash here. It was kind of messed up looking after I fixed it, but you know, all the gauges worked. You could see it messed up here, but you know, it was fine. And this truck was still good after that. So here it is. I was using it to tow that trailer for a while before I had my dump truck. Here's a job I did with it. Here's when I first got my trailer. And probably when I first got this thing as well. So someone gave me this shed, and I was able to use the excavator to load it on there and bring it home with that army truck. And then I made this, I using this thing a lot for camping. So I made this soft top for it. And I kind of wanted it to look like a cover wagon, so I made this out of pipe, and it was like a frame, like that whole thing could come out of there and be a shed on the ground if it had to be. But I thought that looked pretty cool, and I put that military canvas over it. Here's a photo on the way back from camping, and I had a bunch of four-wheelers in the back of the truck. Here's another time going camping, so I remember having 4 four-wheelers in the back, plus my Jeep, and another four-wheeler here. This time was a lot of fun. This was at Mountain Madness. This was one of the most fun years here. See the dash here. I added this brake controller to it. Here's the engine. And I finally did sell this truck because it wasn't that practical of a vehicle. The reason being, it was a little hard to drive. It didn't have power steering. The bed was so high up in this thing. So, like, if you were going to use this to move cargo, like, you'd never use it, because I had a flatbed trailer that went behind the pickup truck, and that thing was like 2 feet off the ground. It was just so much easier to load it. And it was just kind of sitting around for a while. I wasn't using it. Well, I think that's probably why the thing only had 8,000 miles on it. And when I sold it, it had, I think, 10 or 11,000. And then when I went to sell this thing, everyone's offering me like $2,000 for it. I'm like, come on, the thing's gotta be worth more than that. And then finally someone traded this nice chipper to me. It was like a Salco 813 chipper, Perkins diesel engine. And that was good because I used the chipper for a little while, but then I sold that chipper. I think I got like $6,000 for the chipper, and that was way more than this truck was worth. So that did work out. But this was a pretty cool truck to have for a while. All right, so after I gave up on that F250, I needed another pickup truck, and I got a really good deal on this 95 Dodge diesel. This one came with this Western plow, and I only paid $2,500 for this thing. It ran and drove, but it needed a lot of little stuff fixed. But like I remember spending like a few days just fixing stuff on it, but once it was done, it was nice. I remember the guy wanted like $5,000 for it too, and I found like every problem as I was looking at it. He wasn't a car guy, and he's like, and I said $2,500. He's like, no, I can't do that. Then the next day he calls me up. He's like, all right, you have the $2,500? I'll deliver the truck right now. I made this back rack for it. This plow is great. I still have that plow. It was probably winter 2010 with my 2 plow trucks. I had my diesel all ready to go and my Jeep with the plow on it ready to go. And I used that truck a lot to pull that trailer. So here it is the day I closed on my property in probably spring 2011. Towing that dozer there. Here I am doing scrap metal with it. You know, I was winching junk cars on the trailer. And there's another junk car. I dragged it out of the woods somewhere. There's more scrap metal. Looks like a camper there. Here's towing a truck for my friend, this F-150. The thing just rusted apart. The gas tank fell right out of it. It was so rusted. And this was at the dealer. They were supposed to have a gas tank recall on these, and they wouldn't do it. They said it was too rusty. But that was the whole point of the recall, was because the tanks rust out and fall off. But you should have set this thing on fire in that parking lot. That thing was junk. So what killed this diesel? I'm sad that this happened. Hurricane Irene. I had a bunch of trees fall down. Trees fell on everything. Big tree fell on this truck. All right, so here it is with the tree removed. And this was, I actually jacked the cab back up so I could still drive the thing. Right after the tree fell on my pickup truck, I bought this pickup truck. I was planning on driving this. It needed a lot of work. It did run and drive, but I never ended up getting this thing on the road. I did sell it at a little bit of a profit after fixing some stuff on it. This had a diesel engine in it, and it was a standard, so that was pretty nice. But I regret a little bit selling this one, but I don't know. That's just kind of how it happened. And I had every intention of fixing this truck. I'm like, all right, it just needs a cab and a bed. So the bed, you just bolt a new bed on it. No big deal. The frame of the truck was fine. The engine ran fine, drove fine. And the cab, everyone was asking like ridiculous prices for cabs. But I didn't need a whole cab. I was just going to cut it right here and here, and then probably cut it down here somewhere and put new doors on it. All right, so I bought a parts truck to fix that. So I went to the state auction. They had this truck here is the same thing, but it had the gas motor in it, and I got it real cheap because it said it needed a transmission. You know, it came with a plow. I pretty much paid like, I think a little over $2,000. I was like, well, the plow's almost worth that kind of. But then I got this home, and the transmission, it wasn't right, but it worked. Then I kind of just drove the thing for a while, and the transmission got better and better. It just pretty much fixed itself. And I was like, well, I'm not going to cut the roof off of this thing. And I painted it all one color. I put the tires on it, put the back rack and toolbox on it from the diesel. And I was pretty much, well, I guess I'm driving this parts truck now. And actually, I still have this. This has been the best pickup truck I've ever had. I've definitely done some repairs to it in the 7 or 8 years I've had this truck. Plenty of videos on my YouTube channel where this truck is the thing that towed the machine to the job, or there's plenty of videos of me fixing this truck, and plenty of videos of me just doing things with the truck, either even dragging logs around or plowing snow. This has been a great truck. It's in pretty rough shape right now, and I just kind of got a diesel. After driving that gas truck for a while, and it became clear that that was going to be my new truck, I did end up selling this one, and I did pretty good. I sold it for $2,000. The guy was going to put the engine in a Ford, and I kept the plow. So here's here's a job that never got filmed. Like, I was pulling these tires out of here in the winter time. There's a picture of me plowing with it. I'm stuck there, but there's another good stuck picture. There I am. Oh, so this is how I got myself out. So I'd always bring that winch with me. So when you're down in a ditch like this, the winch will usually deal with it. I could easily talk about this truck more, but there's plenty of videos on my channel that are all about this truck. So this is the truck I just replaced this gray one with, and I'm gonna fix the gray one. I'm not gonna talk a lot about this white one in this video because there's already a feature-length film all about the first few months of owning this truck. But this seems like a good truck. I'm happy with it. It's nice that it's not rusted out. Even when I got this gray one, like, it didn't have any rockers in it. It was already pre-rusted out. I'm going to try to keep this white one around for a long time. For a current vehicle, when I don't need to be driving a pickup truck, I got this. This is a 2003 Mitsubshi Montero Sport. And when I got this truck, I wasn't even buying it for myself. I met someone who was moving to the area, and they were like, oh, find me a cheap car. And this thing had been sitting on the side of a main road for sale for months, and no one was buying it. And I knew I kind of liked these vehicles. So I went and bought it for this girl. And then she's from California. The second she got in the thing, she's like, oh, someone smoked in this car before? I can't be in this car if someone smoked in it. I said, well, I just bought the thing for you, but it's a good thing I wanted the car anyway, because it worked out good, because I'm like, well, I'm putting this thing on the road for me. So I've been driving this thing for years now. This has been a great truck. A few things that really stand out about these. One, generally these lose their value pretty quick for some reason. I don't know why, but like, you could compare this to a Toyota 4Runner, but a Toyota 4Runner is like 4 or 5 times the price. And these usually don't rust out. 4Runners and a lot of other stuff, like 4Runners rust out, not so bad. Xterras rust out really bad. You know, a lot of the American stuff is just junk to begin with if you're comparing that to this. So this thing has no rust issues. I haven't really had any issues with this thing. You know, minor stuff, but it's been a very good car. It's all-wheel drive all the time, which is nice. You know, back in high school, my friend had one of these when I had my Trooper, and I think that was every bit as tough as the Trooper because he had super swampers on it and used to race the thing pretty hard, and he was never having issues with it. And this is also when I first got my lift, and I wish I had bought this a lot sooner because having a lift makes it so much easier to work on vehicles. And it was actually pretty cheap, too. This lift was only like $2,400. I'll put a link in the description for it. But that made doing vehicle maintenance so much easier. But I really haven't had to do much to this thing over the years. And it tows trailers just fine, too. But here's that lift is so nice having that thing, being able to have vehicles at any height to work on them. This is the first dump truck I ever got. This is a 1972 International, I think it's a 1310 model. It had a gas V8 engine in it. And I got this pretty cheap, $1,300, because the previous owner couldn't get the brakes working. And I eventually got them working. It was a little tricky. But this was a great dump truck for a while. I got a lot of work out of this thing, just moving stuff around. Here's a shot of it when I was actually putting in my driveway, dumping out all these loads of shale. And this was a reliable truck. Like, here's a shot where I took the thing camping, and this was like over a 2-hour drive to this place, all on highways. You know, I felt fine taking the thing on a trip like that. This was a good truck. You know, here it is here. I made this. I didn't make the whole thing, but I made these ends on the bumper and made it look a lot better. See, there it is, how I got it. And there's the after. And I put these taller sideboards on it. And then here it is. It was great for hauling stuff like scrap metal. You know, here's like a bunch of scrap metal here. And this is actually an entire car right here. I flattened the thing out and then folded it in half, and it fit in there. And here it is moving like bales of hay with it. And here's another load of scrap metal. I had the whole back of the truck full of, you know, box springs and stuff. Then I put a whole nother car on top of it. So this was a very handy truck to have, and it very reliable. I still have this truck. I just kind of stopped using it when I got my bigger dump truck, because the problem with a truck this size was that it was great for materials like garbage or hay or scrap metal or anything that was light. Once you started putting heavy materials in there, it just didn't make sense. Like, say you were fixing a gravel driveway, you'd get a load of gravel. You know, you'd maybe put 4 tons in the thing, and you'd still be way overloaded with 4 tons. But then you dump out 4 tons and spread it out, and it's like nothing. So it just couldn't carry enough weight, a truck this size. So then I was looking for a bigger truck. Once I realized that International dump truck wasn't big enough, I got this. This is a 1987 Ford F800 dump truck. It has the Ford inline 6-cylinder turbo diesel engine. I think it's a 7.8 liter. It has an Allison automatic transmission. And this has been a very good truck. I've had this for years now. It's been very reliable. That engine always runs good. That transmission shifts great. Very easy to drive. The truck has power steering, which the International didn't have and the Army truck didn't have. So it makes it much easier to drive. It's got a much tighter turning radius than the Army truck. It has much more power than the Army truck did. And this truck has been one of the keys to being successful in the excavation business. This thing has moved my equipment all over the place, done so many jobs. And here's when I first got my trailer. I could actually move my bigger equipment around without having to hire someone to do it. Does a good job towing that. You know, here's one of the earlier jobs. I demoed this big garage that was right here and loaded the whole thing into the truck, hauled it away. One big advantage over that 1-ton International was it was really easy to have too much weight in the thing where you'd really have to adjust the driving. This truck, yeah, it's got a 34,000 gross vehicle weight, meaning I can legally carry like 9 tons in it. But this truck doesn't care how much weight is in the thing. I mean, it could be loaded till it's spilling over the sides, and the thing drives the same as if it was empty. Stops, steers, everything. I do not overload the truck, though. I mean, when I'm coming out of the gravel yard buying stone with the thing, if I'm over 34,000, I'll just let a little bit out. But if you're on site or something where weight limits don't matter, this truck is a beast. And hauling gravel with this truck is great. Like, you'd bring a load of gravel somewhere, dump it out, spread it out, and you'd actually have a decent amount of stone. Plus, it does a really good job tailgating it. I can a lot of times resurface a driveway with this truck and not even have to touch it with a machine. One thing about this truck, it is pretty easy to get it stuck, being that it's like so stiff and heavy. It will sink in soft ground. You know, it would be nice if a truck like this was 4-wheel drive. And I've even used it for like so many oddball things like this too. Like here's putting my electric in at my house, where I use the thing to carry the spools and unwind the spools and move them around. And here's this bridge I built, and this truck carried, you know, all the gravel in there to build that road. There's already tons of videos on my YouTube channel of me working with this truck, so I don't need to talk about it too much here. But eventually I did get a bigger dump truck, because even though this one carries a lot of stone, sometimes I'd be on jobs where it wasn't enough. So I got this International 10-wheeler. In spring 2018, I did eventually get a bigger dump truck. This is an 1987 International Paystar 5000. It can carry double the weight of the Ford or triple the volume. And this has been a good truck. I don't need to talk about it too much, because there is a 1.5 hour long video on my channel of when I got this truck. That's pretty interesting, but I've still been driving this plenty. You know, it's nice when doing a road or something, because it just hauls in that much more material than the Ford. But the Ford is a lot easier to drive with its automatic transmission.
Alright, well, this video pretty much talks about every vehicle I've had. I don't think I missed any. At least I talked about all the stuff I had photos of. Thanks anyone for sitting through the whole thing. It's probably pretty long by this point. I wish these great cameras that are available now were available years ago, because it's crazy how you take photos of something and then a bunch of years goes by. There was a lot of things over the years I kind of wish I had photographed. But now, you know, now with these great cameras that they sell now, you know, there's really no excuse to just take a lot of photos and videos, because once a lot of years goes by, it's a lot of fun to look at the old photos. Levi, you like these leaves?